Dog Films presents Paid to Dream with Charles Dennis.
Of course, the best way to enjoy a great wine is alongside a great meal. So let's get started with steaks. We have some ribeye steaks that we've been marinating. We're going to put a liquid rub on them before we cook them. We're going to make sure it gets into the steak here. Now for this, you need a very, very, very hot grill. So our grill right now is at 700 degrees because we want to sear the steaks on each side for 2 minutes. I'm going to put these steaks on the grill.
Good morning. It's Charles Dennis back once again with Paid to Dream. And if you were salivating watching that little trailer just now, blame it on my guest, Rick Browne, the barbecue master of America. This man, there's nothing about barbecuing that he can't tell you, or me. Rick Browne, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for that glowing introduction. I'm rosy-cheeked because of it.
Well, as I said, looking at those steaks, and then you tell me that story you told me about the editor.
Okay, well, Barbecue America was on the air for seven seasons, 13 shows per season. And in the first season, I discovered that after the third show, the editor that put it together was a vegetarian. And he lamented to me that he was facing 13 shows a year for X number of years, watching dripping meat and poultry and fish. And I said, I'm sorry, that's the way it goes. But by the end of the series, after he edited the last show, he called me. He says, "You got me." He says, "I went out and got a steak." And I just maybe I could eat some meat after all.
Well, the great thing, because I love to barbecue, and I think everyone gets a chance to be a chef. You can be the five-star chef with your own barbecue, whereas put a guy in the kitchen, show him pots, pans. I don't know what to do. So what is it, basically a caveman thing?
Yeah, it is. It's pretty primeval in that's how cooking was done. It's called open fire cooking now. We've gone back to that. That's the newest trend, is open fire cooking, where you cook over basically an open fire. You don't need a barbecue grill, or if you do, you take off the grid and you make sure there are flames going and you cook over the flames. In fact, one of the recipes I did that I stole from a guy by the name of Dwight Eisenhower was a steak. He loved to barbecue on the roof of the White House. And what he did was he would put a steak directly on glowing hot coals, put it on for about a minute and a half.
No grill in between?
Grill, it's right on those coals. And I tried it, and it's in a couple of my cookbooks, and it's delicious because you're getting a quick sear. If there's any, debris, charcoal, you just sort of wipe it off. But that's the least of your worries. But it tastes delicious, and it's a great way. That's the way people are cooking now. But I've cooked on charcoal, on briquettes, on wood, on solar. Anytime you get really hot heat like that, you can cook meat, vegetables. I do desserts. I do appetizers. So just about, after all, a barbecue is nothing more than an oven that you took outside because you don't want all the smoke inside.
So how did all this begin? How old were you when you did your first barbecue?
Oh, boy. I was married and had 4 kids, and loved to barbecue in the backyard. And I did everything wrong. I put the sauce on too early. I put on too much sauce. I put it on too hot a fire. I put it on too low a fire. I did what every backyard person in the country does. when people come over and we were going to have barbecue that night, I'd take them out on the porch and say, "Hey, want to see what we're cooking? Lift the lid, show them, put it back down." Well, I lost 10 to 15 minutes of cooking time by doing that. So I was a photojournalist, and I got an assignment to go to Kansas City to do photography for an article about Kansas City. Well, you cannot do an article about Kansas City without featuring barbecue.
Barbecue capital.
Barbecue center of the universe. So I went and I did the photography, and a gal by the name of Carolyn Wells, who was at the time the head of the Kansas City Barbecue Association, Cancun Barbecue Society, took me to a barbecue event, and there were like 60 teams competing for a barbecue prize. I said, "This is unbelievable." She says, "Well, Rick, you got to come back. Convince the publisher to hold off that magazine. Come back in October. I'll show you barbecue." And I went back in October, convinced the magazine and the author to hold off. In fact, he came with me in October because he loved barbecue. And
What was the magazine?
Travel Holiday magazine. And he came with me. We went into the stadium, and there were 450 teams competing. There were over 300 judges alone. And that's the size of the Kansas City, the American Royal in Kansas City. Coincidentally, just this last year, I was honored to be inducted into the Kansas City Barbecue Hall of Fame. And
You've got your PhD.
I've got my PhD, but now I'm in the Hall of Fame. So, what more is there to life?
I like your attitude. Tell me about Barbecue America. You went all across the country doing the show, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm wondering if you ever crossed paths with my friend Jack Maxwell. He had a show called The Booze Traveler.
No, I'm afraid I didn't.
Jack went all over the world drinking the local drinks. It was an amazing show. But you're like the sober booze traveler here.
Well, he then became a spokesman for Alcoholics Anonymous. But for 7 years we did Barbecue America. The first 5 years we did the United States. Then we did 45 states in those years. The last 2 years we went overseas. We did 26 countries around the world, barbecue and grilling. So I sort of did what he did. Instead of paid to drink around the world, I got to eat around the world.
How's your cholesterol?
It's up there a bit, but I'm handling it now. I don't have the same routine anymore. I had barbecue maybe once a week, maybe. I'm a little older and hopefully a little wiser.
Well, I would think that Southeast Asia was no stranger to barbecue because we see all these little places here in Los Angeles. But Europe, I never think of barbecue in Europe. What were some of your memories of that?
Well, I had a great memory in Provence in France. I went and I learned of a chef there that taught French cooking from his home, which is a really beautiful little home in Provence. And I called him and told him what I was doing and asked if I could come and share some barbecue grilling secrets with him and learn from him. And he said, "Sure, come on down." Patek Philippe and Philippe Patek. And we went there. We had a great time. I taught one of his classes on grilling. And then I offered to cook dinner for he and his wife and some friends, something special that he had never heard of. And I have done all over the world to great success. And that is beer butt chicken. Beer butt chicken is where you take a whole chicken and you take a can of beer and for God's sakes, open it.
Yes.
Shove it up the you-know-what, put it on the
Yeah.
grill, and the beer steams the chicken from the inside while the heat is cooking it from the outside.
Ooh.
Well, he was fine with that, except he's French. He says,
Wait.
we not do beer butt chicken, we do champagne butt chicken. So I emptied a can of beer, poured champagne in it, and did champagne butt chicken, and he loved it. So it was a lot of fun. We went to Argentina. I learned about the steaks and how they cook steaks on the grill. And guy takes a T-bone steak, puts it on the grill, covers it with rock salt, kosher salt, really coarse, covers it. After a couple of minutes, brushes the salt off into a dish, turns the steak over, puts the salt on the other side, cooks it for another 2 or 3 minutes, and then serves it. Well, you would expect a lot of salty taste, but you don't get that. The salt holds all the moisture in, so that's the most moist steak you've ever wanted to eat on earth. We had great visits in Japan, out in the countryside in some of the oldest hotels and restaurants in the world. Portugal was fantastic. Uh, Australia is awesome, eh, Mike?
Right.
We went there twice, and we just found that Americans seem to think that we're the godfathers of barbecue. Uh-uh. Everybody in the world barbecues or grills. In fact,
Back to alley oop outside the cave. That's it.
in fact, Australia and South Africa, for obvious reasons, do a lot more barbecue than we do. In fact, in Australia, almost every park or beach has a line of barbecue grills, coin operated, that you put your money in, you barbecue, and then it shuts off and you go on your way. There's nothing like that in the U.S. that I know of.
Throw another shrimp on a barbie. That's it.
We did that. We cooked shrimp, we cooked kangaroo, and which is
Well, what was that like?
like beef.
I had no idea you can go to a butcher shop and get kangaroo.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, I was going to tell you a funny story. We were in Spain and went to a butcher shop, and I'm looking at the meat in the counter, and there's this one thing. It says Del Toro. Well, Del Toro means bull, and they have bullfights there. This is in Valencia, Spain. And I asked the guy, "What is that?" He says, "Oh, it's so sad." He said, "That's the loser bull. When the bull loses and gets killed, they bring it into the shop, chops it up, and sells it at a discount. It's the loser bull."
This is the glue factory for bulls.
Yeah, but edible glue.
I, I mean, like that night, people cook that night after the bullfight.
A couple of days, but
Yeah.
yeah, they allow him to mature in a meat locker and then serve him up. But it's amazing what people eat around the world, grill, that we just turn up our heads and say, "Oh, how could you do that?" Well,
Was there any location or cuisine that you just went, I don't think so, not for me?
oh, not really. China was probably the worst.
Because
Well, fish maw soup, which is a stomach of a fish, they make into a soup. Uh, but they had a delightful thing there that surprised me. Oh, I'm not real big on shark fin soup because it's sort of glutinous and fibrous, but it's tradition in Hong Kong and in China. But one time I was on a press tour and they served this wonderful dessert. It was a soup. It was an almond soup, and in it was floating tapioca in the soup. And I was eating, and I thought, this is wonderful. And I said, "Is it possible to get some more?" And the gals that served were started giggling. I said, "What giggling?" She says, "Do you know what's in the soup?" I said, "Yes, it's almond soup, and it's delicious." And I said, the tapioca is excellent. And they really started to laugh. They says, "It's not tapioca." I said, Should I ask what it is?
I'm dreading this.
Frog fat.
Frog fat.
Yeah. And you know what? I asked for more. It was delicious. Our mind keeps us from trying a lot of things that the rest of the world eats and enjoys.
But we have to stop thinking about what they were like alive
Yeah,
and
yeah.
let's go with,
You don't think of what a steak is alive, or oh, okay, here we go. Went to Scotland, and in the
right?
morning we're on a sheep farm, and we're taking film out in the field of the lambs and their mothers. They're hopping around the field, and it's just an idyllic scene of spring. And then we go back to the farm for lunch, and they got a barbecue going. And I says, "What's for lunch?" It says lamb chops, but they were not the ones that we had watched jump over the fence.
Oh.
But we enjoyed them anyway. But again, like you said, your mind controls two things. You go to a restaurant, you start eating the food, digesting it when you see it on your plate. And that's good. But you've got to realize that if it's something you've never tried before, close your mind, pretend it's something else, like me with the almond soup and the tapioca, and enjoy. And if you don't like it, okay, no problem. There's lots of food for everybody.
Yeah, I remember years ago, my mother and her sister came to visit, and I took them to a Greek restaurant, and I got calamari, and my mother was very, very hesitant until I told her they were scallops. She ate the whole plate.
Oh, I tricked my mother too. We're like persons. She came to Colorado to visit us and went to a restaurant called the Fort, just outside of Denver. It's a really nice restaurant, old fashioned. The Fort. It was actually in a fort. They had a very Western eclectic menu, and I ordered an appetizer, and she says, "Oh, that sounds very interesting," and she tasted it, and she says, "Oh, I really like this," and then she tasted it again, and she says, "What is this exactly?" And I said, "Well, it's oysters," and she said, "I didn't know they had oysters here." No, no, they're prairie oysters. What is a prairie oyster? Well, Mom, it's the part of the male that decides that it's a male. They chop it up, cut it, fry it, and serve it with a chili sauce. She spit it out. But she liked it before she knew what it was.
Yeah, before she knew.
Yeah.
You know, if I see, there's so many, mostly in westerns. You know, you see this scene where they're serving something to the tenderfoot, and he goes, "What is this?" And they go, "Rattlesnake." He goes, "Puh." I mean, we've created this thing about don't touch that unless it came from the supermarket.
Yeah, well, I had rattlesnake in two of my cookbooks. It tastes exactly like you think it tastes. Chicken.
Yeah,
The problem is the bones. There are a lot of bones in it.
really.
Yeah, oh, if you think of a rattlesnake, look at the spine. It's just nothing but bones all the way along. So we
And where would you get the rattlesnake to cook?
at a let me see. There's a wild game place in Denver, Nicky Foods, where you can get wild game from all over the world for special purposes, for restaurants, whatever. I got it there, but here's one for you. A couple of years ago,
Yeah.
I've been involved with a major barbecue festival at the A Casino up in Ridgefield, Washington, and each year they have us barbecue. They have a supper where all the chefs get together and create something. Well, I'm one of the main barbecue chefs, and they asked me to do something different. So I did a whole emu. And an emu, the cousin of the ostrich, was
Yes.
65 pounds. The drumstick was huge. It was at least this long and huge. I cooked it up. We had it right on the table, and I carved it as people came up for samples. And emu, like a lot of birds, like ostrich, looks and tastes very much like beef. If I told you that that was beef roast, you would have said, "Oh, that's pretty good beef roast." But yeah, cooking, that's the biggest thing I've ever cooked is a 65-pound emu.
And where was that?
In Ridgefield, Washington, up at this.
So where did they get an emu?
Oh, there are emu farms all over the United States, especially in the West Coast. The farm I went to was I think 10 miles away. I went and I actually saw my intended victim, not prepackaged in a freezer, but he was walking around. But what happens is, if you're a male emu, you're in trouble because, like with cattle, there's lots of males and lots of females. They don't want a lot of males. They want some select males. So if you're not one of the lucky guys, you're born with that equipment. So I got one of those, and I refused the gal when I went to pick him up. She says, "Are you gonna give him a name?" And I said, "No, his name is Dinner."
Was that the most exotic creature you ever cooked?
Well, I've cooked rattlesnake. I've cooked beaver. I've cooked
Beaver.
yeah,
And what was that like?
sort of like
The symbol of my country.
me, mine too. Eh?
Are you Canadian? Are you from Canada?
Yes.
Where?
Brantford.
No way.
Wait. I have relatives in BC and relatives still in Ontario, mostly around Toronto.
So when did you leave
Oh
Canada?
God, 1957, I think it was. I was born there, and my dad worked for the Canadian National Railroad, CNR. They
Mhm.
have an American division, or they're part of an American division, the Grand Trunk Railroad, Grand Trunk Western. I don't even know if it still exists, but they moved him around Canada and then into Ontario, and then we went to Quebec for a while. But yeah, I'm very much Canadian. Beaver, it tastes sort of like a strong chicken kind of taste. Like I
Yeah.
said, I've cooked snakes. Um,
But tell me about the beaver. I'm being masochistic. I remember the last time I used to work in Stratford, Ontario at the festival. And I remember the last time I was there, I was driving out of Stratford and there were five beavers sort of standing in a row, almost saluting my departure. I'd never seen anything like it.
well, that's the Canadian beaver, how friendly, of
Yeah.
course. Stratford, well, I lived in Stratford a while too, on I think it's Niles Avenue in Stratford.
Yes, I know Niles
There's a
Avenue.
house on the corner that's on the National Historic Register in Canada. That was the home that I lived in. Uh,
What were you doing in Stratford?
well, my dad, one of the,
Oh, of course, that was a huge railway
yeah,
hub. Yeah.
well, the beaver, if it looks like ordinary meat, it sort of looks like, I don't know, a chicken. When you cut off the head and the tail, obviously, and it just looks like meat. And
And what does it taste like? Beef or chicken?
more like chicken with a bit of a gamey flavor to it. So you've got to have a good sauce. And I guess those are probably the most exotic things that I've cooked. Oh no, in Africa I did wildebeest. Um, we
Wow.
were at a wildlife refuge and they were culling the herd. And the owner said, "Rick, you want to take a shot at one?" I said, "Okay, if you're going to get rid of it." So I was not a hunter. I've hunted a few times, but that's for my TV show on the Outdoor Network. But I shot this wildebeest, and we butchered it. And he said, "Do you want the head?" For I said, "No, I'm not going to put a dead animal in my house on the wall." But the rest of the meat, it was like an 800 pounds of meat we gave to a local girls' orphanage and the local police station because they act as game wardens. And it would,
These are the stories you never hear about. All you hear about, oh, you can't kill the animals. Well, if they're overpopulating, Something's got to be done. And if people are starving, here's
That's
food.
right. That's right. And I had a show for 2 seasons on the Outdoor Channel called Ready, Aim, Grill. And I actually got to do some hunting. I hunted deer in Texas. On these are on ranches that raise the deer. And also in Florida, I hunted wild boar. Now, wild boar in California and in a lot of the West, wild boar is an incredible nuisance. They come in, they dig for insects in golf courses and schoolyards and everything else, and they breed like rabbits. So it's almost an open. In fact, I don't even think there's a season on wild boar. You could take them anytime, and I don't know if there's even a limit. They want to get rid of them so badly. But wild boar tastes excellent. I did this in Texas for some hunters, cooked it up, and with a green chili and a green chili stew, they said that was as good a wild boar as I've ever had. Again, it's like pork, but it's a much stronger pork, but not objectionable.
This is not a show that people expected to see on Paid to Dream, and I'm thrilled. But it's show business. The man had a TV show, for God's sake. Listen, you got a book called A Century of Restaurants.
Yes,
and one of my hats is historian, and I'm just, what is the oldest restaurant still standing?
The White Horse Tavern in Newport, Rhode Island. It was 1679, I believe. Don't check me, but there are over. This book had 100 of the oldest restaurants. Of that 100,
Right.
I think about 25 were over 300 years old.
But is this the White Horse Tavern? Is it still the same building?
Same building. Obviously, they've had done stuff to inside and probably some outside. But one of the interesting things is I was just watching a series on Netflix about pirates. And for a number of years, this restaurant was run by a pirate and his family. His father owned the restaurant, and he was off in the ocean raiding Spanish and English ships. And what happened is, at one point, there were like 9 or 10 pirates caught and executed and hung in the public on a dock in Boston or somewhere. He heard about this and decided he was going to retire from the pirate business and go back and work with his dad in the restaurant business. So for another year,
I love it. Retiring from the pirate business.
They worked there for a number of years. There's another restaurant called the Pirate House in Savannah, Georgia, and Charleston, that was run by pirates, frequented by pirates, and an author you may have heard of went there, spent some time, met some characters, which he then put in his book.
Is it Robert Louis
Bet your
Stevenson?
he
I was always afraid to go on Jeopardy because I wouldn't know but
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah. We had some interesting stories when we were doing that research. Went to a little barbecue smokehouse in Sheridan, Wyoming. And the gal, I was asking her what happened in the early days. There were stories of guys on horseback riding into these saloons and shooting into the ceiling and things like that. I said, did anything special happen here? She says, no. Well, wait a minute. You might know this guy. He would come here every summer for a couple of years. And one year he was sitting right there at the end of the bar editing a book from his New York editor. And you might know him. And I said, well, what was his name? She says, I can't remember his name. Can you remember the name of the book? A Farewell to something. I said, A Farewell to Arms? Ernest Hemingway? Yeah, you know him? Unbelievable. But it was. I told her, here's a little tip. If you put a picture of Ernest Hemingway on your wall and you put a plaque on a portion of the bar and the chair, and you have a couple of Ernest Hemingway drinks your business will increase 10 to
Absolutely.
15%. There are people, and I know this because I've been to the restaurants in Spain, in Florida. People come from all over the world to go to a restaurant that Ernest Hemingway favored. She says, really? Well, we're not much for book learning around here. But we had some interesting restaurants. I traveled all over the country.
What's your favorite out of those 100 restaurants?
God. Um, the Pirate House has to be up there. The Commander's Palace in New Orleans. The Buckhorn in Denver. The Buckhorn restaurant in
Yeah.
Denver is has more stuffed animals on its walls than practically any museum in the world. I mean, you're sitting there eating venison, and Bambi's right above you looking down. And it has a great history because the owner way back was a guy by the name of Shorty. He used to be a scout for Custer. Well, he survived when Custer didn't, and he opened this restaurant. And he was a short, tough little guy, and he ran that restaurant. And you didn't mess with Shorty. One time, supposedly, a gal ran into the restaurant saying that someone had just stolen her purse, and Shorty grabbed a rifle. It was the Old West. Went outside, nailed the guy, and that's part of his history. In the night, I believe it was the 1930s, Chief Red Cloud, who was a relative of not Cochise, but a major Indian chief like that, came into town with 3 or 4 other. Yes,
Crazy Horse.
came into town and on horses with full war paint on, and they rode into town, rode up to the restaurant. Some guy told the hey Chef Shorty, you better get out here, and he went outside and went out to greet them, and he recognized them because he had worked with both Custer and Wild Bill Hickok. And
Amazing.
the chief got off the horse with a buckskin package in his arms, walked over to him and said, "My father respected you, and this is for you." And he handed it to him. It was Custer's sword. So to this day, the owners of that restaurant have that sword. I tried to get them to put it on display, and they said, too valuable.
Well, our time is up. And you know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to go have a steak. That's what you've done to me here.
Good. I'm going to have a...
Rick Browne, what an absolute delight, folks. Watch the shows. They're still on YouTube if you look for them. The books are out there. What else? Anything else happening right now we should know about?
I'm working on a book called Timeless Tables. It's the 100 oldest restaurants in the world. The oldest is from 590.
We're going to come back and talk about that another time. This has been Paid to Dream. Please click like. Please subscribe. Have a wonderful day.
And thank you.